My name is Vel Sherton, and I am recording this log with shaking hands, because I have just watched something that will change the galaxy forever. I am a xeno researcher from the Crestari species, and for 40 long cycles I have studied the creatures called humans. I thought I knew them. I thought I had them mapped, measured, and filed away. Neat categories. I was wrong about everything, and now I must tell you why. The alarm sounds ripped through my observation ship without warning. One moment I was eating my morning meal and writing a report about human trade patterns, and the next moment every screen on my vessel turned red. The Vorn Dominion had broken the ancient treaty. 10,000 of their crystal warships had crossed the border into human space, and they were heading straight for a small colony world called Threnody 4. I knew that name. I had visited that colony twice. It had only 3 million humans living on it, mostly farmers and miners and simple families. They had no real defense fleet. Their weapons were old, their ships were slow, and now the most feared war machine in the galaxy was about to crush them like soft fruit under a heavy boot. My hands flew across the control panel as I tried to send a message to the Galactic Concord. Surely they would send help. Surely even the cold-hearted Council would not watch 3 million souls vanish without lifting a single finger. But when the reply came back, my blood turned to ice inside my veins. The vote had been 43-2. The Concord would not act. The humans were to be left alone. I was ordered only to watch and record their ending for the history archives. I slumped in my chair and stared at the stars outside my window. I was alone. I was going to witness the deletion of an entire species, and I could do nothing. I remembered my supervisor sending me one final message before the silence fell. He had written only a few words, and they made no sense to me at the time. He had said, "May the deep currents preserve you, for you are about to learn why our oldest texts whisper their name." I did not understand, but I would soon. The Vorn fleet arrived at Threnody 4 at the start of the 4th hour. Their crystal ships blocked out the light of the nearby star. I zoomed my sensors in and began my cold academic work. I logged the ship counts. I noted the weapon signatures. I prepared my instruments to record the final broadcasts of a dying world, the way people always do for lost civilizations. It is tradition. It is respectful. It is meant to honor the fallen. The humans did not seem to care about my respectful tradition. The first thing that confused me was the radio chatter. It was not panic. It was not crying. It was not the last words of mothers to their children. It was orders, sharp, fast, cold orders. Woman named Captain Holly Barnes was telling her people to pull back to the mountain shelters. A man named Officer Peter Clark was telling farmers to pour fuel into tanker trucks and drive them into specific valleys. Another voice, a young pilot named Grace Whitman, was asking permission to load her small fighter with every bomb it could carry. These were not the sounds of a dying world. These were the sounds of people getting ready to work. The Vorn sent down their first wave of soldiers. 12,000 crystal troopers dropped from the sky in glowing pods. They were nearly unstoppable. Their armor could take hits from most galactic weapons and keep walking. Their own weapons could slice through steel walls like soft butter. In previous wars against other species, these soldiers had taken entire cities in a single afternoon. On Threnody 4, they did not even last 3 days. I watched through my sensors in a kind of frozen wonder. The humans did not fight like any species I had ever studied. When the Vorn troops landed near a small town called Brookfield, I expected the humans to flee or beg for mercy. Instead, the townspeople had already moved. The streets were empty. The buildings were empty, but as the Vorn marched through the town center, the ground beneath them simply opened up. The humans had dug tunnels under their own roads and filled them with mining explosives. An entire Vorn company was swallowed by the earth in a single blink. I wrote in my log, the humans destroyed their own town to trap the enemy. What kind of mind does that? The tactics grew stranger by the hour. At a place called Ridge Valley, the Vorn sent a massive walking machine, taller than 10 men, armed with cannons that could knock down mountains. A single human child, a small boy of maybe 11 cycles, ran out from a hiding spot with something in his hands. I zoomed in to see what weapon he carried. It was not a weapon, it was a metal box connected to a car battery. He threw it at the walker, pressed a button on a little remote, and the machine simply stopped moving. Its crystal systems froze. Its lights went dark. The boy had built a pulse device from kitchen parts and old electronics he found in a garage. I replayed that video 20 times. I could not understand it. My species has tried for 9,000 cycles to disable Vorn technology. We have never succeeded. Human child did it with spare parts in a week. By the end of the 3rd day, something even more troubling began to happen. Humans were no longer just defending themselves. They were learning. They were studying every crashed Vorn ship, every broken weapon, every captured soldier, and they were turning those things into new tools. I watched a group of human engineers take a damaged Vorn rifle, strip it down to its core, and within 2 days they had built a working copy, except the human version fired twice as fast and weighed half as much. This was impossible. This was against every rule of how civilizations develop. A species is supposed to need centuries to understand alien technology. The Snort's humans were doing it in days, in hours sometimes. I sent another message to the Conquered. I told them what I was seeing. I told them the humans were not dying according to our predictions. The response was short and cold. Continue to observe. Do not interfere. Do not make contact with the subject species. But I was no longer watching a subject species. I was watching something I did not have a name for yet. On the 5th day, I saw the moment that broke something inside my mind forever. A Vorn dreadnought, one of the biggest warships in the galaxy, moved into low orbit above the human capital. It was preparing to fire its main cannon, a weapon powerful enough to crack a planet in half. The humans had no ship that could match it. They had no weapon that could stop it. In any normal war, this would be the ending. This would be the final page of the human story. Then a small human cargo ship, a simple freighter used for hauling grain and metal ore, lifted off from the surface. It was not a warship. It had no weapons. Its pilot was a woman named Mary Donnell, a 50-year-old grandmother who had been a simple farmer the week before. She flew her slow, heavy freighter straight up toward the dreadnought. The Vorn ignored her. They thought she was running away. They thought she was trying to escape. She was not escaping. She pushed her ship faster than it was ever built to go. Warning lights must have filled her cockpit. Her engines must have been screaming. She aimed her freighter at the exact weak point of the dreadnought, the small gap in its armor, where the main cannon was preparing to fire. And then she turned off her safety systems and let her engine core overload. Her ship struck the dreadnought directly at the cannon mouth. The explosion tore the great warship apart from the inside. 30,000 Vorn troops on board were lost. The dreadnought, the pride of their fleet, broke into burning pieces that rained down on the empty ocean. I sat in my chair and could not move. In my entire 40 cycles of study in the long history of my species, I had never seen a sentient being willingly give their life for a tactical advantage. Other species surrender when the odds are impossible. Other species flee. Other species beg. The humans did none of these things. The humans had chosen, and the choice was not survival. The choice was cost. They would make the enemy pay, no matter the price. I turned off my recording for a moment. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I realized with a cold feeling that sank deep into my bones that I had been wrong about humans for my entire career. I had called them fragile. I had called them emotional. I had called them primitive. I had been studying them the way a small animal might study a sleeping fire, thinking it was just a warm light. But fire is not a light. Fire is what happens when something burns, and I had just watched the first small spark of a flame the galaxy had tried very hard to forget. The Vorn did not know it yet, but they had started something they would not be able to stop, and neither would anyone else. The second week of the war on Threnody 4 changed how I understood reality itself. I had believed, like all members of my species, that war followed rules. There is an attacker, there is a defender. The stronger side wins or the weaker side surrenders, and then peace is arranged through formal talks and signed papers. This is how civilizations have done things for 12,000 cycles. This is how the conquered keeps order. This is how the galaxy has always worked. The humans had clearly never read our rule book. On the 8th day, the Vorn commander, a crystal being called High Lord Xerx, made what he believed was a smart move. He had seen that the human soldiers were tough. He had seen that their tactics were creative, so he decided to do what the Vorn had done 17 times before to 17 other species. He would target the soft parts. He would hit the places where soldiers do not live: hospitals, schools, food storage centers, water treatment plants, the great library in the capital city. In every previous war, this tactic had worked within days. Species always broke when their civilian places were harmed. Always. It is the oldest unwritten rule of galactic conflict. You hit their homes and they come to the table begging for peace. The humans did not come to the table. The humans stopped smiling. I was watching a live feed when the first news of the attacks reached the human radio channels. I will never forget what I heard. There was no shouting. There were no panic cries. There was only a long, heavy silence that stretched across every human station for almost a full minute. Then a single voice spoke. It belonged to a woman named President Laura Bennett, the leader of the Threnody colony. Her voice was quiet. It was calm. And it frightened me more than any scream could have. She said only this: they chose this. Remember that they chose this. Then she ended her broadcast and went offline. Within 6 hours, something began to happen across the entire human-settled region of space. Ships started leaving. Conquered worlds, not military ships. Civilian ships, passenger liners, merchant vessels, small private craft. Any human who had been living on another planet, working in another sector, studying in another school, was suddenly moving. All of them were going the same direction. All of them were going home. I sent my sensors outward to track them. I counted over 1 million humans traveling back toward the war zone, not running from it, running to it. Old humans who had retired long ago, young humans fresh from their universities, traders, artists, pilots, doctors, mothers with small babies. They boarded any ship they could find and pointed it toward the fighting. My people would never do this. No species I had ever studied would do this. Self-preservation is the oldest instinct of living things. You do not walk toward danger, you walk away from it. You save yourself and your family. You let the soldiers handle the war. But the humans did not see it as a war anymore. I finally understood that they saw it as something deeper, something older, something my translator could not quite capture. The closest word my language has for it is a kind of sacred duty, a debt of the blood, a promise that cannot be broken. When one human is harmed, every other human seems to feel it, and they all come together, and they all bring whatever they have. On day 10, I saw an old man named George Whitaker arrive at 24 in a ship that was nearly 300 cycles old. He was 92 years in human years, which for them is very near the end. He could barely walk. He had arthritis in his hands. He had been a ship engineer 40 years before, retired and living peacefully on a farm in a distant star system. When the news of the attacks reached him, he had simply climbed into his dusty old vessel and flown for 5 days, straight to reach the fighting. When a young officer asked him what he thought he could do at his age, he smiled and said, "I can still fix an engine, son. And a working engine is worth more than a broken soldier." I wrote that sentence in my log and stared at it for a long time. The human war effort transformed with terrifying speed. Factories that had made toys 2 weeks earlier were now making ammunition. Restaurants that had served meals to tourists were now feeding 3,000 soldiers a day. Schools had been converted to hospitals. Churches had been converted to radio posts. Every building and every human town had been given a job in the effort. And no one was paid. No one asked to be paid. It was simply understood that the work needed to be done, and so the work was done. Then came the inventions. I could not keep up with the inventions. In a single week, human engineers produced 3 new weapons that had never existed before in any species. One was a kind of sticky gel that, when sprayed on a Vorn soldier, hardened into a substance tougher than steel and trapped the crystal being inside a prison they could not break out of. Another was a flying drone the size of a small bird that could locate and disable Vorn energy systems from a distance of 2 miles. The third was a device that could copy Vorn radio signals and send false orders to their troops, causing entire units to march in wrong directions and attack empty hills. These inventions violated 6 different conquered technology treaties. The humans had not signed any of those treaties. They did not care. They were not interested in rules written by councils who had refused to help them. I sent another report to my supervisors. This time, I did not hold back. I wrote, "The subject species is not following predicted patterns of behavior. Their rate of adaptation is beyond all records. Their willingness to sacrifice is beyond all estimates. I recommend immediate review of all previous human intelligence files. I believe we have been badly wrong about this species for a very long time." This time the Conquered did respond, but the reply came not from my supervisor and not from the General Council. It came from the Hall of Archives itself, from the office of the Chief Record Keeper, an ancient being whose name had not been spoken in public for 200 cycles. The message was 3 lines long. It said, "Continue your observations. Send daily reports. Under no circumstances are you to leave your post or attempt to return to conquered space. This matter is now classified above your station." I stared at those words for a long time. A cold feeling spread through me. The Conquered was afraid, not of the Vorn, who were losing badly. They were afraid of what I was seeing. They were afraid of what was waking up. And I realized something else. They had seen this before. My people had seen this before, somewhere long ago. Something had happened that made the Conquered lock down human history and bury it so deep that not even their own researchers knew the full story. I needed to find out what it was, but first I had to keep watching the present, because the present was about to become even more terrifying. The human response to the hospital attacks was not to retreat. It was not to negotiate. It was to advance. By the 12th day, the humans had pushed the Vorn off the main continent of Threnody 4 and had captured 3 Vorn warships intact. Not destroyed, captured. The humans were flying Vorn ships now with crystal weapons in human hands, and they were using those ships to attack the Vorn supply lines in orbit. I want to explain how impossible this is. Other species have captured Vorn ships before. No species has ever been able to use one. Vorn technology requires crystal-based thinking. Their controls respond only to beings with hive minds connected by shared frequencies. For a normal biological species to pilot a Vorn ship, it's supposed to be like trying to play a song on an instrument that only responds to the sun. The humans figured it out in 6 days. I still do not fully understand how. Some reports say they managed to trick the Vorn systems by running them through human computers that acted as translators. Other reports say they captured a Vorn queen and forced her mind to run the ships while they gave orders. I was not able to confirm which story was true. Maybe both were, maybe neither. With humans, the line between truth and legend moves very quickly. By day 15, the Vorn High Command made a decision that my people would never have made. They decided to call for help. Vorn Dominion, the feared devourer of 17 civilizations, sent out a formal request for allies to join their side of the war. No species responded, not one, not even the Vorn clients who had served them for centuries. Everyone had seen the reports coming out of human space. Everyone had watched what happened to the Crystal Walker destroyed by a child. Everyone had heard about the grandmother who flew a grain freighter into a dreadnought. The galaxy, very quietly and without saying it out loud, had decided to stay out of humanity's way. High Lord Xerx, the Vorn commander, made one more attempt. He offered the humans a ceasefire. He offered to return to the pre-war borders. He offered compensation for the attacks on the hospitals and schools. He offered to give the humans one of his own planets. As reparation, it was a generous offer. By any galactic standard, most species would have accepted. The human response came from President Laura Bennett again. Her voice was still calm, still quiet, but now there was something in it that made my skin feel cold, even though I was parsecs away on a ship with climate controls. She said, "We are not fighting for borders. We are not fighting for payment. We are not fighting for apologies. You came into our homes. You harmed our children. You attacked our sick in their beds. You have made this something much bigger than a war. You have made this a lesson, and the lesson is not finished yet. We will tell you when it is finished. Until then, do not speak to us again." She ended the broadcast, and that was when I understood, with a clarity that felt like ice water pouring into my mind, that the Vorn Dominion was not going to survive this. They were not going to lose a war and retreat to their homeworld. They were not going to sign peace treaty and shrink into a smaller empire. Something else was going to happen to them, something the galaxy had not seen in a very long time. The humans were not fighting to win. Winning was already decided. The humans were fighting to make a point so clear, so loud, so complete that no species in the next 10,000 cycles would ever even think about doing what the Vorn had done. I sat in my ship and recorded everything, and I began to wonder with a fear I could not shake what my people had hidden from me. What had the conquered seen before? What had the humans done long ago that made the oldest records whisper their name? I was about to find out, and the knowing was going to change me forever. The message arrived on day 23 of the war, and it came through a channel I had not seen active in my entire career. It was a secure line directly from the chief record keeper of the conquered, the oldest living member of our government, a being who had served in the archives for over 700 cycles. The message contained a single file marked with the highest level of secrecy our species uses. It was called simply the Kepler 9 incident. I opened the file with trembling hands. What I read changed everything I thought I knew about the galaxy, about history, and about the species I had been studying for 40 long cycles. 200 years ago, before I was born, before my parents were born, a human colony ship carrying 30,000 souls had been traveling through a quiet region of space known as the Kepler sector. It was a family ship full of farmers and teachers and small children and elderly grandparents heading to a new world for a peaceful life. They had no weapons. They had no soldiers. They were not threatening anyone. They were simply moving from one place to another the way peaceful people have always done. They were intercepted by a species called the Orlath. The Orlath were a mid-sized civilization. At the time, they had 12 colony worlds, a fleet of 80,000 warships, and a history stretching back 4,000 cycles. They were not the strongest power in the galaxy, but they were respected. They held a seat on the Conquered Council. They were considered stable and civilized. The Orlath did something that would erase them from existence. They captured the human colony ship. They took all 30,000 humans as prisoners. They sold some of them as workers to distant mining colonies. They used others for medical experiments. They kept some as servants in the homes of their wealthy citizens, and they did all of this believing that no one would care. Humanity at that time was still considered a minor species. The conquered had not yet recognized Earth as a full voting member. No one was watching, no one would notice. Word of what happened did reach Earth. Eventually, it took almost 2 years for the truth to travel back through the trade routes. When it did arrive, the human government received the news. Quietly, they did not announce it on their news channels. They did not send angry letters to the conquered. They did not form committees or pass resolutions. They simply closed their borders, recalled every human citizen working in other star systems, and went silent. For 60 years, the galaxy forgot about the Kepler 9 incident. The Orlath did not forget. They had tried to return some of the surviving humans once they realized the situation might become political, but by then the humans were not responding to any message. The conquered assumed humanity had simply accepted the loss and moved on. After all, what could a small species do against an established power? 60 years is a long time for humans. 3 generations. The children of the survivors grew up hearing stories. Their children grew up learning names of grandparents who had been lost, names of villages that had disappeared, names of a species called the Orlath. Then one day, the humans simply arrived. I read the classified report, and I could not believe the words on my screen. The humans did not declare war. They did not send a warning. They did not ask the conquered for permission. A fleet appeared in Orlath space, a fleet the galaxy did not know humanity possessed, and it carried out what the report could only describe as a complete and total correction of history. The Orlath homeworld was evacuated of its population. Every last citizen removed to distant refugee camps before being carefully and systematically stripped of all military infrastructure. Every Orlath warship was captured or disabled. Every weapon factory was shut down. Every military leader was identified, tried in a court. The humans, built specifically for this purpose and sentenced according to laws the humans wrote themselves. The trials took 2 years. The sentences were long. The humans were thorough. But it did not stop there. The humans dismantled Orlath civilization piece by piece. They rewrote the Orlath education system. They placed every Orlath citizen under a monitoring program that lasted 3 generations. They banned the Orlath language from official use across the galaxy. They took the Orlath homeworld and renamed it. They returned every surviving human prisoner or the remains of those who had died, and they built memorials with the names of the lost carved into great stone walls that still stand today. When the Orlath were finally allowed to rebuild, they were no longer a civilization. They were a small population of 60,000 beings living on a managed reservation world, speaking a new language that had been given to them, with their old culture studied only in human museums. The conquered had tried to stop the humans halfway through the process. The humans had not responded to a single message. They simply finished what they had come to finish, and then they went home. The final line of the classified report was a quote from the chief seer of the conquered at the time, a wise old being who had seen many terrible things in his long life. He wrote, "They do not have word for enough. We must never teach Them one we must never give them. Another reason to remember. I closed the file and sat in silence for a very long time. I understood now. I understood why my supervisor had sent me that strain warning. I understood why the Conquered had refused to help the humans against the Vorn. They had not been abandoning the humans to be destroyed. They had been trying to keep the humans asleep. They had been hoping in their desperate way that the Vorn would win quickly and quietly, that the humans would be reduced before they remembered who they were. The plan had failed. The humans were fully awake now, and the Vorn had just learned what the Orlath had learned 200 years before. I turned my sensors back to the war zone. The situation had changed again. While I was reading, the Vorn were retreating. Their remaining fleet was pulling back through the wormhole network, heading home to their own space, hoping to regroup behind defensive lines. They had lost 40% of their armada. They had lost 70,000 ships. Their invasion was finished. But the humans were not stopping at the border. I watched in stunned quiet as the human fleet crossed into Vorn territory. No declaration, no warning, no formal statement. They simply crossed the line and kept going. The Conquered went into emergency session. They sent urgent messages to President Laura Bennett demanding that she recall her forces. They offered to mediate. They offered to punish the Vorn through official channels. They offered anything they could think of to stop what was about to happen. President Bennett's response was short. It said, "You had your chance to act, and you chose not to. This matter is no longer your concern. Please do not interrupt us again." She did not respond to any further messages. For the next 94 days, I watched the Vorn Dominion end, not defeated, not conquered, ended. The humans moved through Vorn space with a precision that was almost artistic. They did not attack Vorn cities. They did not harm Vorn civilians. They did not behave like an angry mob or a raging fire. They behaved like careful workers doing a job that needed to be done correctly. Every Vorn military base was neutralized. Every Vorn fleet was captured. Every Vorn leader was identified and collected. The Vorn homeworld was surrounded so completely that not a single ship could leave or enter. High Lord Zerx tried to surrender. He offered his own life in exchange for peace. He offered to hand over every weapon the Vorn possessed. He offered to place the Vorn Dominion under human rule forever. The humans accepted none of these offers. They did not want surrender. Surrender was the beginning of a process they did not need. They already had what they wanted. On day 70 of the campaign, I heard a new voice on the human communication channels. It belonged to an admiral named William Thatcher. He was a tall, quiet man with gray hair and calm eyes. When he spoke, he did not sound angry. He did not sound tired. He sounded like a teacher explaining something important to children who had not been listening. He said, "You came to our homes. You harmed our families. You attacked our sick in their beds. You attacked our children in their schools. You believed we were too weak and too small to make you pay for this. We are now answering the question you asked. We are showing you the answer slowly and carefully, because we want you to understand it. And we want everyone watching to understand it as well. There is no lesson if there is no learning, and this lesson has been a long time coming." He paused, then he added one more line. He said, "We do not enjoy this work, but The work must be done, and we are they. Only who will do it. The broadcast ended. I had been studying humans for 40 cycles. I had read their history. I had eaten their food. I had spoken their languages. I had written papers about their strange customs and their emotional lives. I thought I knew them. I had known nothing. The humans finished their work on the Vorn in the 94th day. The Vorn Dominion, which had existed for 11,000 cycles, which had crushed 17 civilizations before, which had been the terror of the eastern arm of the galaxy, was now a small, quiet population living on a managed world under a new name, speaking a new language, teaching their children a new history. It had taken the humans less than 100 days to do what the conquered could not have imagined doing in 1,000 years. And that was when I understood, finally and completely, why the oldest texts of my species used a single word to describe humans in their deepest archives. The word was Maroon. In my old language, it meant the ones who cannot be satisfied. In simpler terms, it meant death. Not because they kill easily, they do not kill easily, they are careful, they are slow, they are precise. They are called death because when they come, they do not stop until the thing that hurt them is gone forever, not defeated, not punished, gone. And now, finally, I had to report all of this back to the conquered. I had to go before the council, the same council that had voted to let 3 million humans die on Trinity 4, and I had to tell them what I had seen. I had to tell them what I now understood. I prepared my ship for the long journey home, and as I set my course back toward conquered space, I wondered what the council would do when they learned the truth. I wondered if they would listen. I wondered if they would understand. I wondered most of all what the galaxy would look like in 100 cycles, now that humanity was awake, and now that everyone who had watched the Vorn fall knew exactly what humans were capable of. I was about to help decide the future of every civilization in the known stars, and I was terrified of getting it wrong. The journey back to the conquered capital took me 11 days, and in that entire time, I did not sleep more than 3 hours at a stretch. My mind would not rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the footage from Trinity 4. I saw the grandmother in her grain freighter. I saw the child with his homemade pulse device. I saw Admiral William Thatcher's calm gray eyes as he explained to the Vorn why the work had to be done. I saw all of it again and again, and I tried to prepare the words I would speak to the council. There were no words good enough. I knew that already, but I had to try. When my ship docked at the Great Ring station that orbits our conquered capital world, I was met by 6 senior officials waiting at the airlock. They did not greet me. They did not ask how my journey had been. They simply escorted me through the long corridors of the station, past silent guards and locked doors, into a chamber I had never been permitted to enter before in my entire career. It was called the Inner Hall. It was where the council met when a matter was too serious to be discussed. In the public chambers, the full council was already assembled. When I arrived, every great species of the galaxy was represented. I saw the tall feathered Avalai. I saw the 6-armed Krellin diplomats. I saw the floating Vasti in their pressure spheres. I saw the ancient Ori stone speakers, so old that their bodies had turned the color of cooled lava. And at the head of the chamber, in the great Silver chair reserved for crisis sessions. I saw the chief record keeper. Himself, the being who had sent me the Kepler 9 file. He was older than any other member of my species still living. His eyes had seen more history than all other eyes in the room combined. I was brought to the speaker's platform. The chamber fell silent. The chief record keeper spoke first. His voice was soft but carried through the entire hall. He said, Velsharatin, you are the only member of our species who has observed the entire human war. From beginning to end, you have seen what the rest of us have only read about. In classified archives, please tell this. Counsel what you know, speak truly. Speak fully, we will not interrupt you. I took a long breath. I began to speak. I told them everything. I told them about the first days of the war and how the humans did not behave like any species I had studied. I told them about the inventions that should not have been possible. I told them about the grandmother who had flown her freighter into the Vorn dreadnought. I told them about the child with the pulse device. I told them about the million humans who had come home from other worlds to stand with their people. I told them about the hospitals and about the silence that followed the attacks on the hospitals and about President Laura Bennett's quiet voice saying they chose this. Remember that. They chose this. I told them about the 94-day campaign that ended the Vorn Dominion. I told them about Admiral Thatcher's speech. I told them about the humans refusing every offer of surrender because surrender was not what they wanted. What they wanted was for the lesson to be complete. And finally, I told them what I had realized on the long journey home. I said, we have been measuring the humans wrong for a very long time. We have measured their lifespan, which is short. We have measured their physical strength, which is modest. We have measured their technology, which is behind many older species. We have measured their wealth, their population, their fleet size, and all of these measurements have told us that they are not an important civilization. But we have been measuring the wrong things. I said, humans possess 3 qualities that no other species in the galaxy has ever combined in one body. They adapt faster than a virus because their minds can change in hours what takes our minds generations to change. They bond to each other with a loyalty that does not weaken, so that when one human is harmed, every human feels it as their own harm, and they remember everything forever. And they teach it to their children, and their children teach it to theirs, so that a wrong done to humans today will still be remembered clearly 300 years from now. These 3 qualities together, I said, create something the galaxy has no name for yet, a species that cannot be broken by short-term pressure, a species that cannot be bribed or exhausted or tricked into moving on, a species that simply waits and remembers and grows stronger while it waits and then arrives when it is ready, not when anyone else expects it. I said the Vorn did not lose a war. The Vorn were reviewed. The Vorn were audited. The humans did not see them as an enemy army. The humans saw them as a problem to be solved carefully and permanently. The council was silent when I finished speaking. I stood on the platform and waited. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the soft hum of the chambers. Life support systems. I could hear very faintly the sound of something shifting behind me, and when I turned, I saw that the chief record keeper had risen from his chair. He walked slowly to the platform. He stopped beside me. He looked out at the assembled council for a long moment. Then he began to speak. He said, 200 cycles ago, I stood in the same chamber, and I voted with the majority to seal the Kepler-9 records. I voted to hide the truth of the humans from our own researchers, from our own children, from our own historians. I believed at the time that if we did not speak of them, they might forget themselves. I believed that if we left them alone and did not disturb them, they would sleep and the galaxy would never have to face what they are. He paused. He said, I was wrong. I have been wrong. For 200 cycles, you cannot hide a fire. By closing your eyes, you can only pretend it is not burning. The fire burns anyway, and the humans have always been burning. We simply chose not to see it. He turned to me. His ancient eyes looked into mine. He said, Vel Sheraton, you have done what no one else has had the courage to do. You have looked at them without fear, and you have told us what you saw. The council thanks you for your service. Then he turned back to the council. He said, we must make 3 decisions today, and we must make them correctly, or we will not survive the consequences. The first decision, he said, is about the Sol exclusion zone. 200 years ago, we placed a quarantine around human space. We told the humans it was for their own protection. It was not. It was for ours. We believed that keeping them contained would keep them small. This policy has failed. The humans have grown anyway. They have grown stronger, and they have grown angrier, and every cycle that we pretend we are in charge of them is a cycle that confirms to them that we cannot be trusted. We must end the exclusion zone today. We must apologize to the humans publicly. We must admit that we were afraid and that our fear made us foolish. There were some quiet murmurs in the chamber, but no one objected openly. He continued, the second decision is about the council itself. Humanity must be given a permanent seat with full voting rights at the highest level of this government. We must treat them as equals because they are equals, more than equals in some ways. We will not survive by pretending otherwise. Again, there were murmurs, but no objections. Then he said, the third decision is the hardest. The humans were abandoned by us. When the Vorn invaded, we voted 43-2 to let them face that invasion alone. They will remember this. They will teach it to their children, and one day they will look up at us and ask, when we needed you, where were you? He paused for a long time. Then he said, we must give them an answer now before they have to ask. We must act before they remember being abandoned. We must become the kind of allies they will one day need us to be. Because snorts if we do not, if we leave this debt unpaid and unacknowledged, we will discover that the universe always collects on debts owed to humans, always. The Orlith learned this. The Vorn have just learned this. We will not learn it. We will pay the debt now willingly while we still can. The council voted that evening. And GT clears throat. And GT, the vote was unanimous. Even the 2 species who had opposed the humans most strongly in past decades voted with the chief record keeper. I watched it happen, and I understood that I was seeing history change in real time. The Sol exclusion zone was ended. Formal apology was drafted. Humanity was granted its council seat, and a new policy was created called the Standing shield which required every conquered species to come to the aid of any human world under threat immediately, without a vote, without debate, without delay. The law was written in simple words. It said, we will not abandon them again. I was given a new assignment that same evening. I was made the first permanent ambassador from our species to the human homeworld. I was told it was an honor. It was the highest post that had ever been created for a xeno researcher of my rank. I accepted. I thanked the council. I bowed my head in the traditional way. But in my heart I was afraid. I was still afraid. I traveled to Earth 3 weeks later. It was my first time seeing the human homeworld. I had expected a grim place, a world hardened by war and memory. What I found was different. Earth was blue and green and full of life. Its cities were noisy and bright. Its children played in parks. Its elderly sat on benches in the sun. Its markets were loud with bargaining. Its music was loud and strange and somehow beautiful to my ears. I met President Laura Bennett on my first day. She was a small woman with kind eyes, shorter than I had expected. She greeted me with a warm smile and offered me tea. She apologized for the weather, which was raining. She asked about my journey. She asked about my family. She was not cold. She was not threatening. She was a grandmother who liked her garden and her grandchildren and the quiet evenings on her porch. I had watched this woman end the Vorn Dominion with 3 sentences spoken into a microphone. During our long conversation, I finally asked her the question that had been in my mind for months. I asked her, why did you do it? Why did you not accept the ceasefire? Why did you not take the planet they offered? Why did you pursue them all the way to their homeworld and dismantle everything they were? She looked at me for a long moment. She sipped her tea. Then she said something I will carry in my heart until the end of my cycles. She said, because we do not live long lives, my friend. We only get 70 or 80 years, most of us. In that short time, we learn to love a few people very deeply, our parents, our children, our neighbors, our friends. When those people are harmed, we cannot wait. We do not have time to wait. We have to answer quickly, and we have to answer completely, because we might not be here tomorrow to answer it all. Other species live for hundreds of years. They can afford to be patient. They can afford to let a wrong sit for a generation and hope it fades. We cannot. Our short lives make our love sharper. Our short lives make our memory heavier. Our short lives make us what we are. She sipped her tea again. She smiled a sad and tired smile. Then she added, the galaxy calls us death. I know that, we know that, but it is not true. We are not death. We are just people who refuse to let bad things go unanswered, because we will not be here long enough to have that luxury. We are people who pay our debts and collect our debts because we only have one life to do it in. If that makes us frightening to longer-lived species, I'm sorry, but we will not change. We cannot change. It is simply who we are. I sat with her words for a long time. I understood them for the first time in 40 cycles of study. I truly understood the humans. They were not monsters. They were not gods. They were not death. They were just people, small and short-lived and full of love and full of memory, doing the best they could with the little time they had, and their best, it turned out, was more than any of us had imagined. I have served as ambassador to Earth for 7 cycles now, I have seen the galaxy change. I have seen new alliances form. I have seen old fears fade. I have seen human children play with Kresh Tari. Children in the gardens of my embassy. I have seen humans and Vastai share meals and laugh together. I have seen the beginning of something new. Something the galaxy has not known in 12,000 cycles, a peace that is not held together by fear, but by understanding. And I have seen the Vorn too. The small rebuilt population, the new language, the new history, they are learning to live again, slowly under human teachers who do not hate them but who also do not forget. They are a warning that stands in the middle of the galaxy, a living reminder of what happens when you harm the people that the short-lived ones love. I record this log now as my final report. I am old by the standards of my species. Soon I will retire. Another ambassador will take my place. But I wanted to leave this record for the students of our species and for the students of every species that one day may wonder what the humans are and why they matter. Do not fear them. That was our mistake. Do not try to control them. That was our mistake. Do not try to hide from them or contain them or measure them by our rules. Instead, stand beside them, honor them. Remember that they love quickly and deeply because they do not live long. Remember that they answer wrongs completely because they cannot afford to leave wrongs unanswered. Remember that they are not death, they are life lived at full speed, lived with full heart, lived with the knowledge that every day must count. The galaxy whispered their name in fear. For 12,000 cycles, now we speak their name with respect, and in time I hope we will speak their name with love. Because they deserve it, they earned it. And the universe at last has learned to see them truly. This is Vel Sharatin, ambassador to Earth, signing off my final log. May the deep currents carry all of us forward together into whatever comes next.